What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracy, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. What is up? What is up? What is up? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Grit. You know what? I'm not going to take a lot of time with the intro this week. I'm super excited. I've had Jonathan Hayward on the docket to be on Coffee and Grit for quite some time now, and I had to travel last week for a client, so we had to bump it another week. So I'm just super excited to have Jonathan in the studio. I met Jonathan, and this won't be a surprise to many out there because I've mentioned this several times, and Steve will be out hiking, I know, when he's listening to this, but I met Jonathan through a CirrusNet, and man, I admired Jonathan from afar. I don't even know this guy would give still does give these member minutes that are just absolutely phenomenal. And I've always struggled with member minutes in the sense of like explaining your difference and wrapping it up in a minute. And this guy just nails it. And so the really cool thing is it's not just talking the talk. So many people will go out there and talk the talk. And what I've heard from so many people that have worked with Jonathan and just who he is there's a clear difference. There's a clear reason why he's successful, and there's a clear reason why he's here. And I'm super excited to talk about that and to share some maybe stories that people may not know about him. So Jonathan, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Jason. I'm happy to be here.
And I've heard this is the first podcast you've been on, so I'm super excited about that.
Correct. I was chatting with someone this morning saying, hey, I'm going to try something finally 21st century. They said, geez, you sound like you're 70. I'm like, not quite. Let's not get that far ahead, but I'm looking forward to it.
It's super awesome. So I had told Johnny, the studio engineer, a couple weeks ago, our next guest, I told him who was coming in. He's like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Hopefully I'll be there when he's there. He's coming in. He's my insurance guy. He's coming in. So when I talk about, that difference, you are out there, you're creating that difference to where people, when I just mentioned your name, there's been so many guests I've mentioned to people that they haven't gotten that response. And so that's the response that you're getting just by mentioning your name.
That's really exciting.
How'd you get there?
Oh, wow. So, it's funny. Johnny and I had a great chat, honestly, about a month ago. He was introduced to me by the owner here at Wayne Media Group, and we looked at his situation. He said, hey, I'm running into this. My insurance cost is sky high. I'm not even sure things are right. Can you help me with it? I said, absolutely. So we actually had 3 different conversations. I looked over his stuff, and yeah, it was a great success story in a heartbeat. I saved his family a lot of money, fixed a lot of issues along the way. His insurance is actually set to do what he thought it would do, which is important if you need it. Hopefully we never do, but if we do need our insurance, we want it to actually work. And we got it to the point where everything was lined up for that. And along the way, I'll let his enthusiasm speak for itself.
Well, I think there's a thing that we always assume we have insurance, and we always assume it's going to work. And then I think the pain is when you line up and a tragedy happens and you realize that it didn't work. And I think for us, the consumer, we're like, it's the insurance company. And I love how you're constantly like, you don't need a better insurance, you need a better agent. And so tell me about that. How did you discover that was the problem, and make that your marketing?
That's a really good question. And you're right. I wrap up a lot of my member minutes with the phrase, the next time someone complains about their insurance, remember, they don't need a better insurance company, they need a better insurance agent. So when you look at the world of insurance, every company out there, and this is no surprise, they're all out there to make money somehow, right? That's what companies and businesses do. So the question is, how do you get a win-win, not a win-lose? You don't want to be the losing customer who's paying an arm and a leg more than you need to for the company to win. You want to find a carrier that'll offer you a really good rate, but at the same time, good quality coverage. So if needed, it can be a win-win in both directions. When you look at how consumers can get insurance, there's basically 3 avenues. They can go directly to the carrier, whether it's on their website or the carrier's call center. That's not a bad use of time, but you're only finding out what one carrier is willing to do for you. Alternatively, you can work with a captive agent. There are a lot of companies out there that they restrict the agents that they're only allowed to use that carrier. So now you have someone local, so at least they're familiar with what makes our state unique. And boy, is Michigan weird. But again, they're still a little bit limited in what they can offer. Then you can find an independent agent or an insurance broker who has the ability to shop around. So right there, that's kind of the first key difference that I've identified and said, I really want to have that versatility and that ability to be more for my clients than just someone who can take their order and tell them what the price would be. Second to that, the details make a difference. And I've said this before too. Most people will go to a doctor because the doctor knows more about medicine than they can figure out on WebMD.
Yeah.
And similarly, we'll see a financial analyst, we'll talk to someone who's a professional in each area, we'll seek someone out who knows more about it than we do to guide us, because taking the time as an individual consumer to become an expert on every area we need to make a decision in is too time consuming. It really is. Mm-hmm. And for some people, it's really challenging to try to decipher that. So if they can find an insurance agent that can guide them through, here's what really makes the difference for you. And if I can position myself to, one, have the expertise to do that successfully, both in how insurance works, but also in how people perceive it, and help them to really understand and grasp how the choices could affect them, people should be able to see that and say, okay, that was useful. I'm liking this. This is someone I'd like to work with, I can trust, has my back, cares about making sure this is right. And on top of that, with his multiple carriers, he can likely shop around and find me a good price through him rather than me having to do it myself. And as I got to realizing this is a real advantage that I can bring into the marketplace and to my clients, it occurred to me that, you know what, that's a fortunate set of circumstances that I'm operating in as a business. And in this case, it's the circumstances of that allow me to do that higher level of service and be successful. So at the end, it's not which carrier or which company that I need to place them with. Every carrier will follow through on the claims in their contract as required by law. And if not, consumers have resources they can go to. Worst case scenario, a lawyer. But practically speaking, if I can give them a better experience finding it and setting it up and then making adjustments, that will make their experience less painful, less time consuming, less expensive. And I don't want to say more enjoyable, because who really likes insurance? But an overall better experience than they're used to having other places.
Before we get back at it, a quick shout out for our sponsor, Playbook Builder, powered by AI. This show has always been about giving the resources and the tools to small business owners in order to grow and scale your businesses successfully. And so I'm so excited to partner with a company that does just that. If you've listened and heard any of our guests, you've heard talking about building process, developing and training, building culture are all such important pieces in order to building a great company. Well, Playbook Builder, powered by AI, has come along and revolutionized the game on how you can do that for your team and people, whether you're onboarding new people, training and developing, continued training and developing, you're looking to scale your business or eventually sell, or most importantly, you're looking to build a legacy as a visionary. Playbook Builder, powered by AI, is able to solve those problems for you. For me as a consultant, I've been able to plug in, and it's so amazing for what I do for clients. I can now leave a legacy. And so, for example, I'm next week training a new hire for a company, and I've been able to build out the next month of her training program using Playbook Builder, powered by AI. The cool thing about the AI, what does that do? What's the hardest part of building out a process? Taking the step by step and making it easy to learn. What the AI piece does is you can actually type in what process it is, whether you want to onboard, if you want to onboard a new employee, type in onboard a new employee and what type of industry you're in, and the AI will put together a foundation for you to build out your playbook. It is absolutely incredible. But don't take my word for it. Head on over to playbookbuilder.com, and these guys have set it up to where you can take this for a test run with no obligations. Plug in what kind of playbook you want to build. If it's a sales training playbook, for example, plug that in the description. And in the description, you can also put in what kind of industry you're in, and then hit generate, and it will generate a playbook for you. Impress from there, and you can take a 30-day free trial of the playbook system altogether. I was in an industry where people didn't enjoy it. It was in the cellular industry. And there was at one time an NPS study that people would rather spend all day in the airport than go into a cell phone store. And I always looked at that as a win for me, because if I can make the process easier for my clients, if I can make it enjoyable, if I can listen to details and find their needs and get them into the right fit, it's not hard to be different and to in a given experience that you're speaking of.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do? Because I'm sure a lot of it is really discovering who your customer is, or who your client is. And how do you go about that?
I start with telling someone that I want to get to know enough about your situation that I'll know what questions to ask you so I can make sure we take the right approach right up front. A lot of my peers, if you call up to get a car insurance quote, will say, okay, what's your name? What's your address? What's your date of birth? What's the VIN number? Do you want full coverage? They're just diving right into the nuts and bolts without figuring out which nuts and bolts to ask about. My first set of questions for someone usually is, okay, where do you live? Who else lives there? Who else is going to drive the car? How are you going to use the car? What do you do for a living? Do you have a side job? Let's get a perspective on the circumstances the vehicle is going to be used in so we can make sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, the options that actually apply to that consumer are available, and they point out the things they may want to consider choosing without forcing them to. Of course, I let my clients make their decisions once they can make an informed one. But nevertheless, getting to know their circumstances first and how things tie together allows me to help them get it right the first time. And that's important because once someone gets to the point where they need to use their insurance, whatever's on the paper is what's going to be the rule when it comes to actually what gets paid or not. If the I's aren't dotted or the T's aren't crossed, or if the information is set up on a educated guess that's not accurate, which unfortunately some of my peers may do if they're feeling a time crunch, or if the options that someone need are not set up, then they're going to find out the hard way that it wasn't the way they wanted it to be. And let's be honest, how many people pay close attention to their insurance day to day? We don't. We get up, we go to work, we do our life. We kind of hope and trust that our insurance is there if we need it. And I tell everyone all the time, if your insurance all of a sudden becomes interesting to you for any reason, you've had a bad day. You've heard that before. I can see that. So ultimately, you have to get it right when you set it up. And that's where, for me to do that best, I'll ask all the big picture questions first and then get down in the details once I know what we're looking at.
You think about all those things. You think about a situation. It's like you find out that it wasn't covered, and it's probably the question wasn't asked even.
A lot of the time, yeah. I'll talk to a lot of people that come to me and say, "You're asking about that? No one's ever asked me that before." And I'm like, "Really? Okay. Well, here's why I'm asking. Here's where this could make a difference for you." I mean, even something as simple as this. Take professionals that have to drive around as part of their business. Take a realtor. Take what I do. Take what you do. You visit businesses.
Yep.
If the vehicle's insured for a commute usage, you run the risk of having a claim denied. On the flip side, if it's insured with business usage included in the rate, which is a slightly higher rate, it's true, and that's what a lot of people like to avoid. However, at that point, if you've disclosed that to the carrier and they can rate accordingly, they can no longer say that that's a reason why they wouldn't have to cover. So for individuals that do use their car as part of their daily work, and they have to drive from place to place to place during their workday, and again, I don't mean getting to and from work, but as part of their job, it's important that that's put into the way the policy is written up so that
it's just stuff that you just wouldn't know. I wouldn't know.
Yeah. I mean, and I've had so many people call and say, no one's ever told me about this before. They just asked how many miles a year I drive. And that's it. Well, that's an example to me of an insurance professional that is cutting corners, making assumptions, and maybe they're making an educated guess. The last statistic I heard is that the average tenure of an insurance agent in Michigan is 18 months from starting their career to changing career paths. So if you randomly call somebody, you've got a better than 50% chance they've been in business less than a year.
Wow.
Is that the experience that someone wants an expertise level? It depends on the carrier and depends on the consumer. Some people want quick, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But when you talk to someone like me that's been doing this over a decade, hopefully anyone with my experience level should have had enough time to figure out there are I's to dot and T's to cross and information we need to uncover and find out if that's the case so that we can advise our client appropriately.
From a sales standpoint, I've worked with so many salespeople across my 20 plus years in the industry, and people always have a hard time asking questions. And I'm wondering, we talk about like the lazy agent, and sometimes people just like don't they feel uncomfortable asking people questions. How do you get past that?
I can tell you a short story as an example to this. So, I've talked about car insurance twice. Let me slightly change lanes. I do car insurance, I do home insurance, property insurance, vehicles. I also do life insurance. I do pet insurance. I have a lot of personal types of insurance that I do. when I was new to the insurance world, I felt uncomfortable asking somebody, what's your income? And who goes around asking somebody else how much money you make? It's one of those things that socially we steer clear from. Well, the same way that a doctor will ask you questions and you would answer them honestly because they need to know, if I'm going to be their insurance doctor, there's things I need to know as well. And that light bulb click for me that one of my mentors shared with me over a decade ago made a ton of sense to say, all right, I need to gather the information. I need to take the time to do this right. Otherwise, I could be giving them a sense of security that's not really based on having what they thought they had. And I never want that to be me. So I've done the opposite. In fact, I've never had someone tell me they wish I was more thorough.
Yeah.
So, and I take my time, but and I think a lot of salespeople get nervous about, well, if I take too long, will the customer lose interest or feel like they have to hurry or rush? I figured out I can tell all my clients up front, I'm going to do this as much on my time as I can and not on yours. I'm going to break this up. We're going to have multiple phone calls. I'm going to gather all the information I need, and then I'm going to let you go about your day. I'm going to work through it, review it, figure out what I need, let you know what homework you need to send me. I'll review that. We'll have another chat. I'll dive a little deeper on the details, and then I'm going to let you go again. Then I'm going to do all the shopping around once I know exactly what to look for you. And on our third chat, I can actually present what I've come up with. So my client may spend a total of 3 20 or 30-minute conversations with me and get the benefit of 7 or 8 hours of my working time for them. But yeah, if I kept them on the phone through the entire process,
they'd die off.
So, I think if you realize you're doing your customer a service, you can get past that hesitancy to ask those questions. And if you show them that you really are looking to get the information you need to serve them well, I find most clients are receptive to that.
I think you said 3 powerful things in there for those listening. One, setting the expectation. This is what it's going to look like. When you can communicate to them, this is what it's going to look like. It's clear in their head. Why is it important to me that you're going to ask these questions? The second thing was you adjusting and understanding, like, if I don't ask these questions, I'm not going to be able to find out the right information. Like, it's easy to get past a hurdle like that when it's for the greater good, when it's going to be for the greater good of your client. What was the third thing? Having a process of period, having a process of like, we're going to discover, we're going to do that, then again, you're setting the expectations, but what done looks like. Mm-hmm. You know what that journey looks like. And when you can paint that picture, so many people miss those 3 important steps.
I think you're right. Before I got into doing insurance, which is it's interesting. It is very sales heavy. It's also a fair amount of existing client service too, because people come to you and they're going to stay with you. They need vehicle changes, address changes, occasionally shopped around again. I tell most people, have me move your insurance around about once every 3 years if nothing's changed. If things have changed, then we can look at it sooner. Earlier than that is not always beneficial. It depends on the details of what's happening in the market and what companies' rates are doing on the whole. Yep. But either way, there's a sales aspect to what I do as well as a service. And in effect, service is kind of an ongoing sales conversation. You continue to reinforce for your client that you have what they are looking for, and they'll continue to follow you and stay with you and trust you and keep working with you and trust your advice. And it allows you to really do a better quality of service and give them options because you can connect with them once you've built that rapport. So I put a lot of effort into that, up front and then along the way. And it's one of those things that has proven to work over time.
What's so beautiful about it is that's what people mention. Like I've heard you say that a few times where people never have asked me to be more thorough, but like that, when people are giving you raving reviews, the number one most common thing is he's so thorough, he's so detailed, he doesn't miss a dot, he dots all the I's, crosses the T's. Like people are saying exactly the things that you're saying here. It's like your customers are trained because you're setting those expectations along the way.
Yeah, I do, truthfully. And I find that for any sales area that helps. And it's funny, before I got into insurance, I also spent some time selling jewelry. I spent some time selling large appliances. So 2 totally different fields, still sales, completely different products entirely. People have different things they're looking for that, and in terms of what's a key decision-making factor on what product they want to buy and where do they want to buy it from and from who. But either way, if I can show them, here's how I want to help you find the right fit for you, that seems to resonate with people a lot. And I think that could be applied in any industry.
Any industry. It absolutely is. So you talked about a little bit about your experience here and kind of going back to what you said before about insurance being interesting. Did you just wake up one day and be like, yes, insurance, that's it for me?
Nope. Definitely not. There's a bit of a story to that one, but I'll try to do the short version so we keep a conversation going on this podcast. So,
I'm a fan of the long story, by the way. That's what the whole thing's about.
There we go.
So, yeah.
I kind of found insurance by accident through Craigslist, which sounds crazy, but I will explain that. There's
intriguing. I'm ready to go to the
story to that. So if you had gotten to know Jonathan Hayward right after he had finished college, you would have found him selling appliances. You'd also find him coaching figure skating, which I still do to this day, by the way. I love that. My heart's been in that sport since I was a kid. I could go on and on all day about that. But anyway, so I was chugging along. Things were going well. The crash of '08 happened. People stopped upgrading their appliances and started going for just the minimums to get by. Of course, in a commission sales environment, that meant the income fell with it. So I said, I need to find something else. And at that point, I had a couple of years of sales experience and said, where could I take this? And let's see where we're at. So I did a wide search for sales associate, sales representative type positions. And I looked across, job boards. I talked to people I knew. And yes, I looked on Craigslist. And believe it or not, that the sales manager at the time, this was 13 years ago, went a little off script for the company because that's not their normal way of recruiting, and put a posting up on that. And I thought to myself, and I'm not kidding, I've been selling extended warranties for 2 years. How different could insurance be?
Right.
Boy, did I have a lot to learn.
Yeah. A little bit different.
Well, I put the application, the resume in, went through the interview process, and lo and behold, a few months later, I found myself in that spot. And one thing that's been really, really great for me, in my industry, I have flexibility of schedule, which creates another one of those win-win scenarios. One, I'll have some clients that can't talk during regular business hours, and they really need to talk in an evening, and that's okay. I will do evenings and weekends by appointment or when someone needs, absolutely. On the flip side, because I have that control and flexibility with my schedule, if I need to run an errand in the afternoon, I can. If I have a figure skating student that wants a lesson at 4 o'clock when they get off of out of school and can get to the rink, I can do that. In fact, I'm doing that this afternoon.
That's awesome.
And then I'll be back on the phones taking care of a couple of clients this evening after dinner. So there's a flexibility that allows me to do the things that I love, take good care of my clients from a scheduling and work-life balance that I like. Meanwhile, for insurance itself, it's not the insurance itself I'm passionate about. I'm not quite that crazy about it, or crazy in general. But I will say this. I have a passion for helping people. I enjoy solving puzzles, and I enjoy communicating. So when you put those 3 skill sets together, I'm fairly analytical. People can tell by now, listening to me. I can handle the math and the numbers aspect of the policy, the technicalities of the circumstances of how do I build a package to do this? Do I use one carrier? Do I use 3? If someone has a trailer, do I cover it on the car policy or the home policy or on its own? I'll figure out different ways to put a package together, and I enjoy that process, which gives me the stamina to be thorough enough to find that best option.
Yeah.
And then while I'm at it, because I enjoy taking care of people, there's the detail and the motivation to keep going with that. And then the communication process, I can find a way, how do I translate this from numbers on a page and technical terminology? What does limited replacement cost mean as opposed to true replacement cost, et cetera, and actually convey to somebody, here's what this will do for you if you have to use it. And then when people's eyes are kind of fly open going, wow, I didn't know that, but now I understand, that's great. Yeah, I definitely want option A, not option B. I love that. That fuels and inspires me when someone can grasp where they're at and really feel confident that they know what they're getting. So altogether, this particular profession kind of stacks up and lines up with things that I like to do that are kind of in my strength suit, and it fits in my work life overall. And at this point, I've now got a pretty decent client base. And honestly, as a business, I get most of my business by referral, largely from my own existing clients, some from targeted networking like CirrusNet. That's been wonderful for me. I could sing praises of CirrusNet all day long. But again, I've hit a point where it's just such a nice, solidly well-oiled machine that I love letting the machine run.
So then as that machine's running, I know that's kind of led into something that's been new in this past year of building a team.
Mm-hmm. That is absolutely correct. So a little bit of context I think might be useful for this.
Yeah.
So I work officially with Comparion Insurance Agency, which is owned by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company. And until a year and a half ago, that's who I worked for. It's a corporate structure. I have corporate benefits where I'm at, but I still manage my own customer flow. In essence, I have the skills and a job description of an entrepreneur without the capital overhead, which is kind of nice from a sense. I still get a 401k at the end of all that. However, within that range to grow, once I hit a certain size customer base, I was eligible to dive into a program that the agency and the company offers where they will hire someone to work specifically for me. And I worked towards that program for several years. Like I set that as a goal 5 years ago, and long-term path, built up my customer base over time and hit a point where all the metrics were where they needed to be. And I got approved for the program about a year ago. So started looking for the right person. I hired someone. Her name is Joanna. She's fantastic. We brought her on board in May. She had 9 years experience in the industry as well, not really in a sales capacity, but from a customer service capacity, and she understood insurance. So frankly, she knows the product really, really well, if you want to translate that into bigger sales view. And it's been a new thing for me to say, how do I guide and organize a plan for multiple people? How do I work a second set of hands into the business flow? It's been fun. Plus, it gives me an opportunity to enjoy teaching and sharing with her everything I've learned and figured out. I have a passion for teaching and educating. I'm happy to teach my clients how things actually work. And I've been enjoying sharing with Joanna what I've learned about how to successfully have those conversations with people and either help them to see that, yeah, this is a good team to buy from, or even just creatively think outside the box, but still inside the rules to find a solution for somebody that might not have come to mind at first thought for the customer especially.
Yeah.
So it's been a fun journey for me, and it's been a blast at this point, and I'm looking forward to continuing it as we go.
That's really cool taking that, because you talked about at the beginning, like I love teaching, to take that to now building that team, bring that person in. It's almost like leaving a legacy, downloading them into what you've done, helping her, get to that level.
Yeah, I can see the parallel there. It's fun. I'll tell her, like any good teacher would do, first, I want you to learn from all the mistakes I made getting here. But then second, I'm happy to share ideas on things you can try. And honestly, I think every business, every salesperson needs to find their own conversation path.
Yeah.
How they want to say things, how they can relate to customers. And because everyone's unique, everyone will have their own personal best style. Yet there are still some common threads that you can fit across every sales individual or customer-facing business. And the more that I can share what I've already figured out, hopefully the easier I can make her experience and our clients' experience on the whole. And it's been a fun, fascinating journey for me so far.
That's cool, because we relate to people differently depending on our personality, So I don't know how much different she is from you, but it's one of those things where she might be able to relate to somebody that you can't in a different way, but with that same overall, I guess, core values and core intent with what you're doing.
I think you're absolutely right about that. And I think you make a good point here that I don't think there really is a one size fits all in the business world, in the sales world, or in the insurance world for that matter. The coverage package one person needs to have everything fine-tuned so they're paying for what they need and nothing extra is going to be different from the person sitting beside them or across the street from them or their next door neighbor.
Yes, yeah.
And I think that same what's the right product for the person is a key thing that I think a lot of salespeople miss. And sometimes that's even acknowledging when the product you have may not be the right product. And so can you help them find a resource that does have that? And guess what? The next time they need your product, they'll come back to you, and because they'll remember that you helped them. So that said, to dial back a step from that to what you were talking about, where personalities may be different, you can connect with people differently in different ways. I think every customer's personality is different, as well as every employee's personality is different. So when you find a way to say, how do I relate to you, knowing who I am and who you are as I get to know you, we can adjust that. And that kind of chameleon capability to hear your client and get to know what they're looking for, I think goes a long way. And that I think can be applied regardless of personality set, is get to know your client and what really motivates them.
It's the hearing part that you just said. And I think that relates to a lot of people, where no matter what your personality is, if you did most of the discovery and the hearing part, if you're listening to your customer, if you're asking good questions and you're listening, you're going to be different than most. You're going to stand out.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. A lot of people know what I mean when I say, if you call a company's call center, you know the script you're going to hear. You know the responses you're going to get. Like, yeah, okay, yes, they're saying this. If you have a question, ask about this. We get used to a certain setup where it's like, all right, we know that's a call center experience. In fact, one of my classic examples of this is the banking industry. If you call a bank's call center, you know what you're going to hear them ask.
Yep.
If you walk in and talk to a teller, the conversation may be completely different, even if they get the same information, help you process the same transaction. But different tellers, it'll feel different. And then different customers, honestly, like a different experience. You have some customers you can joke around with all day long. I have a couple clients that I'll spend 15, 20 minutes chatting about things completely unrelated to insurance, just because we both enjoy that.
Yep.
And then still we get to business and wrap up and keep things moving. And I have others that just want to get to it and get it done.
Yep.
And that's okay. I think that kind of flexibility is one of the things I love about this industry and what I do, because I don't have to follow a script. There's key points I want to hit, but the more natural and organic I can just make it that I'm helping somebody in a way that I can, I think the more naturally business flows.
It is. It's just natural. And it's like, I love how you're examining like styles and playing, feeding into that. Like if you're quick and you're in a hurry, let's do that from a standpoint as quick as possible while being effective, right? But getting down to business as opposed to chit-chatting about the kids.
Yeah, it depends on the person.
Yes.
In fact, and I'll tell you something else. I've had two different sets of advice, even when it comes to opening a conversation, since we're talking about business and sales. Some people will argue that you're better off when you start not asking if this is a good time or not, because they're going to tell you no and shut you down, and just you don't get the conversation rolling.
Yep.
I feel differently.
Okay.
My favorite way to open is, did I catch you at a good time, or would another time be better?
Uh-huh.
Interesting. I'm not really kind of opening the door to, no, I don't have time. It's, is now a good time, or would another time be better for you? And if so, what would that better time be? That way customers know I'm not pushing, I'm not trying to put any pressure on them. And I find that low pressure tends to work really well when you're trying to build that rapport and build trust. So I think when you have an industry where the individual who's providing the service matters to the person who's the client or the purchaser or the shopper, then I find that's a sales industry where asking, is this a good time or would another time be better, can go a really long way. Let's call it one of my favorite little tips or tricks. I'll tell anyone who's new to doing what we do is, don't be afraid to ask someone about that.
That's interesting, because I coach people on the opposite other end.
Sure.
In fact, when people ask me if I have time, I'm already pissed. I'm like, "Why? You already wasted time." Like, and that's just my natural reaction.
Okay.
It's like if somebody says like two things, and like if somebody ever says like, "Get to it when you have time, no rush." Like you've just signed the deal that I will never get it done because I like just put zero importance onto it, and it will sit in that bucket forever. So I want to talk more about like what you get out of that, because I do spend a lot of time like, don't waste time saying that question. What kind of responses do you get?
It depends on what's motivating the person to connect to begin with.
Yeah.
If there is some external factor that's putting a deadline on them making a decision, then they'll circle back and connect with you.
Yeah.
In my world, the most classic example is they get the offer for the renewal policy in the mail and the rate skyrocketed and they want to make a decision before that policy renews. Sometimes it's someone buying a house and they have to have insurance in place before they can close on the house. So there's an externally imposed deadline on making a decision. I don't have to at all try to make it happen. I can ask them, when's a good time for you? And I know they will make the time because it's something that's being driven externally.
Yep.
When it's something that's internally driven, then sometimes it's more a question of, let me see if I can show you why a particular time is a good time to make a decision by. And then it goes a long way at that point if I've built that rapport and built that trust. And then can show them, all right, it's, for example, with life insurance, you can buy that anytime. Nothing forces you to buy it. What's interesting is the price for that increases depending on the type of policy. either at your birthday or your half birthday.
Mm-hmm.
So I can sometimes point to that and say, well, you want time to think about it? That's fine. Let's circle back before the price would go up and reconnect. And then that kind of, again, creates that, let's pick a timeline rather than just leave it into whenever we get to it, we get to it. I don't like open-ended, when we get to it, we get to it.
It's always the next step.
Yes. But I can still create that sense of what's our next step, even by asking, is now a good time or would later be better? 9 times out of 10, I'll usually get a response of, later would be better. Okay. Do you want to connect after work? Do you want to connect sometime tomorrow? What's good for you? Mm-hmm. On occasion, I'll get a response from a customer saying, I have no idea when's better. It's like, all right, when do you want me to try you again? Yeah. You know, I'm still looking for a planned and agreed follow-up step.
You're going to have a follow-up.
Yep. And it allows me to create that. I mean, if someone's in the middle of running into a meeting right now, I know they just want to get me off the phone, and I'm not going to get anywhere at this moment connecting with them anyway. And so I've learned to recognize and accept that and gauge the follow-up to the timing that's likely to work well for them, especially because if you sell and connect with clients the way I do, where I try to build trust and rapport, I need their attention for them to see how much effort I'm putting in. So I need to connect with someone when their mind isn't getting pulled in 6 different directions to create that kind of a rapport with them. So I find that for me, I get better results talking at a time that we can agree is a good time rather than just diving in.
That's what I love. And, you know, a lot of times people come to me from a sales standpoint and they want to know this killer strategy that'll work every time, or the words that will work the right way every time. And to me, there's nothing that exists like that, because everything is different, right? Your process is a little bit different. You and the way you're building rapport, that works so well in your system. And you're setting the expectation that this is how we communicate. And so there's a rhyme and reason behind it, you know, like it, and then maybe somebody else, it's just, it doesn't fit.
You know, you're right. And even then there's ways to more softly still guide someone into committing to a time or committing the talk.
Yes.
You know, I get requests sometimes by email to say, hey, can you send me a quote for this? And then a customer doesn't realize we're going to need the talk for me to do this correctly and not just throw something together and pop it in front of you, which a lot of my peers do. And so I'll often reply and say, hey, I need to start with a brief chat. But rather than saying, when can you talk? Because that's too open and doesn't allow me to guide the conversation at all. Sometimes I'll reply with, what's your availability to chat either today from this time to this time, or tomorrow before noon, or Wednesday between 4 and 6? You know, I'll lay out a couple of options and say, what's your availability at those times? And then it kind of curtails the window to say, we're going to talk in the next 3 days, because those are the options I gave you, without me having to say that. And customers often just work with that, and it works well for them. And you know, I've had so many customers say, thank you for being persistent, helping make sure I get this done. And I don't have to force it right now to make that happen. I just have to give them a limited set of options to choose from, but I'm still letting them pick, and everyone's comfortable in that environment, and we still get the job done when we need to.
It's like the battle at home when the wife's like, what do you want to eat for dinner tonight? You know, and if you just like have 2 options, you know, like, I don't know, I'm thinking this or this. What do you think? Now you've given some options and they can make the decision.
Rather than opening the pantry and look at every single thing on every shelf. And what about this? What about this?
So you're going down Google and looking at the different restaurant options and, you know, like naming them off and that kind of thing. As I was thinking about that, like, I think a big difference, and the reason why I say don't ask that question is because most people, their mindset when they're asking that question is around, I don't want to bother somebody. Right. It's a kind of a wishy-washy, like, please tell me you don't have time so I can like get off the phone now and exit. And it comes off that you have a definitive reason why you're asking. Yeah. You said straight up, people need to be focused and I need your attention.
Yeah. So it guides a lot of how I open the conversation and set the tone. And it's funny, you talk about some salespeople being nervous about bothering people. Well, it's almost like I'm giving the customer the choice. You get to tell me when I'm going to bother you. Yeah. But I'm going to bother you. No, or I don't even want to bother you. I just want your attention so I can do this right for you correctly. And you know what? This raises an interesting point. Not every service provider, I think, is going to be a great fit for every possible customer. If you have a customer come along whose style doesn't match how you like to do business, you may not be a good fit. Just like you can find attorneys that decide this particular high-profile client is not the right fit for me. I'm not going to take that on. Sometimes as a service provider, it's important for any business to recognize what clients do we want to serve, what supports the mission of how we want to practice our business, and can I develop a process that works well for those clients? If it doesn't work as well for others, okay, that may not have been a good fit anyway. To give you one example, if I get a client that says, I just want the cheapest thing, I really don't care how it covers me, that is not, I mean, can I do that? Possibly. Yeah, sure, I've got access to all the tools to do that. I can get really good rates for anyone because I've got so many carriers I can shop through. And I will, but I also personally prefer to make sure that, and I feel better with my work if I know my customers will get what they're expecting.
Yeah.
And I have a few that I have done, what I'm going to call the streamlined package for, as long as they knew what they were getting and they were clear that that's what they wanted. We had a chance to look at the options. I'll let them decide what the right fit for them is. But if they're not willing to have the time for me to make sure I know what they're getting, I'm not going to sign someone up for something if they don't know exactly what it means. Not when it could have, if a couple $100 now could mean thousands of dollars.
That's what I was going to ask is what's cheap in insurance? Because you have a cheap monthly bill, but then what is, it seems like there's a correlation to this might be cheap now, but you're going to pay later.
Well, there's a lot of things that can affect that. And I'll tell you one that's really pertinent for anyone that is local that's listening from Michigan. And I'll give you another example that's pertinent everywhere. So for folks that are local in Michigan, we are the only state in the country where health insurance is not required by law at all times to cover car accidents. At least the only state I'm aware of, for disclaimer's sake. Which means in order to know how your car insurance personal injury coverage will affect you and how much it will cover you or not cover you, you need to know what your health insurance will do first. Do you have a plan that will cover or won't? And even if it will it take the lead or only pay after your car insurance stops? And the answer to those questions creates the context to understand how far will this coverage last before it could potentially run out. And now I don't know how I'm paying those bills. Now, for some people, they have enough savings, they're not worried about it. I've got a huge, if someone comes to me and says, I have a huge health savings account, I've got Medicare already, or I've got health insurance at work that I already know covers car accidents, I would rather skip that and not include personal injury coverage. You can do that now. You can exclude it from your policy under certain cases. And that can be a great way to lower the cost if you're in the position where that's a safe step. But if someone comes to me and says, well, I have no health insurance, well, they don't have the choice to get none. But even if someone says, well, I have health insurance, but I don't have any savings, if all of a sudden a 20% hospital copay came along, that'd be a problem. Well, then I want them to understand that if you do drop it completely, you're at risk of having to pay that. And you could find yourself with a 4-figure or 5-figure bill left over after your health insurance stops. Is that comfortable? If it is, great. If it's not, then maybe it's better to carry some of this coverage and spend a couple $100 a year rather than save that couple $100. So that's one example that's Michigan specific. I think the classic example nationwide is, do I want collision coverage on the car that's older or not? If I'm not going to get as much money out, is it worth buying collision on? Well, that depends. If you have someone coming along who has an older vehicle and the value is lower, number one, the cost of collision is going to be lower than a brand new expensive car, so it may not be that costly. Some of that depends on driving record and where they live, et cetera. In fact, a lot of it depends on that.
Yeah.
But even then, like
if you're in Detroit, for example.
Well, that is one area that in general tends to have higher rates than most of the surrounding state. That is accurate, unfortunately. So if someone's living there, the cost of collision coverage may be higher than if there's somewhere that's lower risk. So you can kind of gauge what's the cost of that versus the value of the car, and does it make sense? But even then, the bottom line could be, are you in a position that if someone hits you and your car's gone, can you comfortably replace the car, either with your own cash or through financing? If you can, okay. If not, maybe we should carry a collision coverage anyway, so if something happens unexpectedly, you have the resources you need to keep going. And once you get to the point where you don't need it anymore, then drop it. So this is one of those, there's no one size fits all. You can drop this part, drop that part, and water down a policy, or you can have it more built up depending on what fits the needs of the individual I'm speaking to.
And this just really ties into the whole tagline of, you don't need a better insurance, you need a better agent. Because one, how many agents are actually asking all these questions to have a better understanding? And I don't know if you know that, but just knowing from a chance of being out there in the world and having insurance my whole life, like there's not that much detail to it, and these questions aren't being asked per se.
Mm-hmm. Think for a moment, if you will. I'm going to use an analogy everyone can connect to. If you go out to dinner, all right, and you order a really nice meal, and that's fine, and if you go start thinking, do we want to add an appetizer? Do we want to add a salad or soup? A good waiter may ask, well, your meal is huge. Are you wanting dessert? If you are, I might recommend you save space and skip the appetizer. If not, go ahead.
Yeah.
And that's a waiter getting to know, what will this particular customer want? And can I guide them knowing what I know, which in that case, the waiter knew the meal was huge. So versus if it's a smaller meal, go ahead and get both. You'll have room.
Yep.
You know, that is one of those types of personal approaches that I've always taken. You know, you ask the question, how many insurance agents will do that? You'll get every insurance agent asking, do you want, you know, this or that? Or how about this? What size deductible do you want?
Close-ended questions.
Mm-hmm.
You have no idea.
Yeah. Or here's your list. Which one sounds good to you? Well, how do I know as a customer if I don't know how this affects me? And following that, if I can offer some insight on how it could actually affect you, now it's not just, am I choosing, you know, unlimited personal injury or a $250,000 personal injury? It's choosing, am I getting the type of coverage that I need to fit where the rest of my finances sit? And can I afford to self-insure or not? If you can, by all means, go for it. If you need the coverage, though, that's what insurance is for. And not everyone takes the time to explain or get to know enough about a customer's circumstances to offer advice instead of just give options.
Yeah. And I love that you said that, because it goes more than just you asking questions. It is the insight of why, one, you're even asking those questions, and then explaining why their answers are important to them.
Yeah. I mean, as an example, here's one more that I think can connect for a lot of people probably listening to this podcast. I not only ask people, what do you do for a living? I always ask them, do you have a side business or a hobby that makes money? Every customer gets that question. As one, I'm looking to figure out, do they need business use allowed on their car?
Yeah.
But also for their home. How many people have a side business? They start from their home and they have items at home, whether that's inventory, whether that's equipment, whether that's the computer they schedule on, things at home they use in their side business. Every homeowner's policy has automatic limits for business use items, which can be raised if the insurance agent discovers we should look at flipping that lever and dial that up. But the only way to find out if I need to do that for somebody without automatically doing it for everyone and charging everyone extra for potentially nothing is to find out, does this person run a business at all? And that allows me to customize this to actually fit what they need. But it takes time. Yeah. And that is the interesting trade-off in my industry. You find that people in the insurance world are successful one of two ways, financially successful one of two ways. Either A, they're really fast. They don't do detail. You know, the old adage in sales, throw enough spaghetti against the wall, some will stick.
Yep.
Throw it faster, more of it will stick.
Yeah.
That is how some insurance agents operate. And you'll know that because you call for a quote and you're off the phone in 6 minutes, or 10 or even 15. And I'll get all I need. Okay, that's kind of quick. On the other hand, those people, once they're done with their sale, where do they go next?
The next sale.
Hopefully.
Maybe.
Or maybe it's the next cold call.
Yeah.
Whereas with what I do, my strategy, I honestly have not had to try to actively pursue customers or cold call in years. My next client usually finds me because my existing client base is so thrilled and happy that they'll recommend me to them, to anyone else they know in a heartbeat. And I tell people all the time, and people laugh when they hear this, anyone you care about, you can give them my phone number and email. If you don't care about them, don't give them my number. And that is the response I get. But even something like that and building rapport. So
that's great.
I get to the point where customers get that, and it's such a different level of experience that they do recommend me to other people. I actually do get referrals from my clients. And that is where I spend my time serving my customers instead of having to spend time to find them. Now, those two extremes work for insurance sales. Anywhere in between, you don't get enough business flow to be successful as a business. So it's just a different strategy. But I looked at those two early on when I realized I need to go one of these two routes to be successful. And I had no question which route was going to fit me better. It started slower, but it has snowballed over time, and I've loved it.
I had a sales guy that was on my team, and he was, from a numbers standpoint, the most successful guy I'd worked with to that point, and he'd just kill it. But he had just a churn and burn, right? Like it was a constant. He had to look for those new sales every single month versus the people that are sending people to him, right? And so at some point you get exhausted from that. And how do you continually do that every single month when you have to go out and find it and like go hunt for it and, versus you take some more time, to save the time later and actually enjoy the work that you're doing because you're getting good people sent to you.
Let's talk about that for half a moment here, because there's short and long-term benefits to that. In the short term, if you churn and burn, you touch more people, you close more in theory.
In theory.
I'll get back to that.
Yep.
But in the long run, what I do with a quality build for my customers is more like farming. I'm planting seeds that will eventually come back and benefit me. And they do when people send people to me. When someone says, hey, my brother said you're great. My coworker said you're great. This guy I talked to on the street, not really, but whoever, that is a great compliment. I love it when that happens, and boom, I don't have to take any time to find that client. They found me. Yes. Now I just have to take good care of them, and the cycle can repeat. So it's more of like a farming aspect, but once you've got that seed, you cultivate it, you help it grow, you make it healthy, you got to put the work in for farming to work as a sales method. It's interesting, I said from a churn and burn standpoint, if you go faster, you get more sales. I'm going to give you a couple interesting statistics. In a call center, a successful insurance agent's closing rate is about 5%. That's a call center setup.
Okay.
A lot of individual agents that are local agents are considered successful, including even my own agency scoring system, if the agent is closing around 15 to 20% of the people they talk to. So 1 out of 5 is doing well. My closing ratio is usually in the 90s. I just take a different strategy and approach. And as a result, most of the people I talk to, I can find a really good fit, a really good solution for. I take the time to find it and not just look at a couple options and move on. And because of that, I do still close and still generate a good volume and flow of business because I cultivate each one to its potential and then place them almost every time with someone that I can do. So I think I'm going to say this, if someone likes the churn and burn, do it right, do it with a product where that works for you, go for it. But if you're going to farm, give it 100%. Don't halfway farm or try to halfway do it. It won't actually bear the fruit you want it to bear.
Absolutely.
If I didn't have the closing ratio that I did, taking the amount of time that I do, I wouldn't get high volume business. I do get high volume, but it's not because I'm talking to thousands of people. It's because most of the people I talk to become my clients.
Yeah.
And it ends up being worth the time I invest.
It's a very simple formula. It's hard to do because you actually do have to put the work into it. You do have to go through and ask the questions and have the knowledge and make the right recommendations and have that client's or that person's best interest at heart. That takes work. And that's why sometimes the churn and burn or people get this lazy mindset and they don't do it all the way. You know, they maybe do parts of it, but it's not all the way.
Yeah, people have heard me say this, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to try my best to do it right.
Yep.
And that simple concept, that if I'm going to go after this, I'm going to actually put enough effort in to really see how this goes. If I'm going to have the perseverance, the persistency, which are different, and then the willingness to follow through. That's one other point, is that it takes a lot of willingness to keep going and keep pushing. There are times I get discouraged, like any business. There are times where I feel like I don't know where the next customer is coming from, or like I'm having a hard time finding a solution. But sure enough, if I keep looking, if I've got 18 carriers and the first 12 or 15 are a problem, all I need is one to really knock it out of the park from a cost standpoint that allows me to put together the package someone needs, and I'll get it. But it just takes time to find it sometimes. And sometimes I'm lucky, and the first one I check has got it every time, and I'll still check 2 or 3 others at the very least to make sure this is as good as it looks. But there are times I have to check them all, and if I wasn't willing to do that, this wouldn't work the same way. So I think for any business, finding what system works, and then how do I maximize that system and bring it to its fullest potential rather than just dabble in it. I think if you dabble, you don't find out what you can really do. You give it 100%, and then you'll find out if you can really do it. And there's a funny analogy I could probably draw from my years in figure skating.
Yeah.
If you take off into a figure skating jump half committed, you're going to find out real quick that gravity's committed either way. So if you're going to go for it, you better go for it like you mean it. And I carry that into what I do professionally as well. And it has brought me through the points of people doubting that that's not going to work. It's not going to be successful. But sure enough, it has been. And I've hit the point where, right now I am currently the only agent in my agency in the state, and there's about 70 of us, that has a large enough book to have a second set of hands. Awesome. So I'm very happy and blessed to be in that position. But it took a lot of work to get here, but it was work that once I committed to it, I gave it 100%, and that was the only way to make it work.
That's so awesome. You mentioned figure skating again. I would be remiss if we didn't tell this story.
Sure, go for it.
Tell me about that.
Oh boy. So when I was a kid, I saw Brian Boitano win the Olympics. I just dated myself for anyone listening, but that's okay. I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and I asked for it, and my parents were like, all right, we're going to buy him a set of skates for his 6th birthday and a set of lessons, and he'll get so frustrated, he'll move on and we'll go back to baseball or something. Well, that didn't happen. I found that I loved it. I loved it in particular for me as a kid. It was something that I could directly see. If I put the work in, results will happen. And I liked that as a kid. But as I've grown up, I'll give you a quick bio for context. I continued to skate a lot. Like literally, I trained to compete. I went to nationals 3 times. I have 2 national medals at home in a box. So I had a fairly successful career per se. I never made it internationally. I had to stop competing in the junior divisions just before getting to that level. That's when, I was in college and said, hey, I've got homework. I could coach and make money, or I could skate and spend money. Well, academically speaking, the homework is a must if I want the grades, and I need to have an income. So that's kind of where my time shifted in college, and that's okay. I work with that. But I found that I love coaching coming out of that. And one thing I love about figure skating as a sport is that not only do the participants learn that the more effort I put in, the more results I get, they also get used to the idea, and I think this is critical in business, that what you do will be evaluated. People will be looking at it and assessing the quality of the work you've delivered when you're on the ice performing, whether it's a show or a competition. And even a competition, sure, that's when you're working with a sales prospect and they're talking to 3 other people. All right, I'm okay with that. I'm going to let my work stand for itself.
Yeah.
If it's a show and it's not a competition, all right, you're still being watched. You get used to that. You get comfortable with that, along with the literal and figurative analogies that if you fall, it's okay. You can get up, dust yourself off, and keep going. Literally, as well as figuratively. You can deal with setbacks in that sport, and you have to, and so that carries over. So there's a lot of things about figure skating that I love. And, for anyone curious about it or listening, I currently coach a lot at the ice rink in Canton, Michigan. I am one of few coaches in the state that are technically master rated in 3 different areas in figure skating. I've actually put together courses for beginning coaches to learn how to coach, and I'm one of the few people in the state that are certified to give coaches their certification exams. So I've taken it, again, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it 100%. It's my personality. But it's something that's fun and something I enjoy. Aside from all of that, it's just, in a way, it's almost like a second home. I can joke I grew up in an ice box. It's half accurate, but no, it's a place where I have something that I love doing. And at this stage in my life, where my insurance business is my primary profession, figure skating has become, in a way, coaching it is almost like a hobby that makes money for me.
Yeah.
That's not to say I only do it at a hobby level. I'm comfortable stating publicly I do it at a full professional level for the service I deliver. But in the grand scheme of my life, it's something I'm passionate about. I do on the side that happens to pay for itself and bring some money in rather than I have to pay for it. So you can bet I have those options on my home insurance and my car insurance to match. But anyway, it's something that I still love doing to this day, and I think I will do as long as I am able. Even when I retire from insurance, I'll still be coaching skating. It's just part of who I am.
That's so cool. I can see your eyes lighting up as you're talking about it. It's so awesome. But I love what you said. People are used to being watched and critiqued. I think that's a huge thing in business or just life in general.
Yes. It's funny. Even for folks that are in business for themselves, not only are their products being critiqued, but what they do as an entrepreneur is being assessed by other businesses. Do I want to work with them? Do I partner with them? Do I recommend them or not? And when you recognize that your work can stand for itself, and this is something I've learned from skating that I think anyone can benefit from. And when you take off for a jump, you don't know for sure if you're going to land or not. You know you will come down, but you don't know how it's going to come out until you actually try. And at some point, once you take off and you get running with whatever you're doing, okay, this is off to a great start. This will work. Those are great. Then you get the ones you're not totally sure about. And I'll tell you, the first time a figure skater lands a jump, it's a surprise. They don't know it's coming. They're not sure if it's going to work or not. And they had to be willing to literally jump into the unknown to have a shot at that success and start figuring it out. I think for anyone new in sales, that's a direct parallel. That you've got to be willing to take a shot without knowing if it's going to hit or not to finally start connecting with people and then figure out what made that connection work. How do I replicate that? How do I do it better? How do I do it without sacrificing something else that matters too? And I think in business, anytime somebody can recognize that I don't necessarily know for sure, but I have a lot of good reasons to suspect this probably will work. I know I'm offering a quality product or service. I know there are going to be people that will appreciate that. I know the pricing is appropriate for it, and I can speak to that confident that I know what I'm delivering. I may not be totally confident that the person's going to buy, but I know I'm delivering a quality product at an appropriate price for that product. And at that point, you'll start having success because other people will start to see that, even if you don't know ahead of time. And that, I think, is something that in every business people can always carry with them, is that you need to go confident on what you do know, even if you aren't sure how it'll be received. And there will be people that receive it the way you hope, as long as you deliver it with confidence.
I love it because I get such a great visual of like the first client I landed, and it was like thinking about the jump, sticking the jump. You know, I got this, and then but then you get better and you get better.
Yeah.
And then you realize that, you know, like that first jump was actually not great, but I landed it, and you get to improve as you go.
Yes. And I think I can draw this exact same parallels in my business and sales journey in every industry I've done sales in. All of them had those same parallels that you're talking about. So I think I would encourage any listener to this that don't be afraid if you're not sure if it's going to land or not. Take a jump, give it your best shot. They will start landing. And if you start to realize it's missing, figure out why, try to correct that, try again. But you'll never be 100% confident that it will work, ever. You can be 98% or 99%, but even that takes time and effort to develop. So go develop it, take the time, push through, be persistent, and you'll get there.
It's the best advice ever, because like from a coaching standpoint, I've just not even coaching standpoint, I've talked to so many people that want the assured answer, and they're not going to move until I know it's going to work. And it just doesn't work that way.
System, guaranteed.
In fact, it's going to probably fail. Like it's probably, you know, it's going to fail to some degree. And,
sure.
You know, you've got to go out there and do it though, and take your lumps and figure it out. Like I'm doing a sales talk tomorrow to a bunch of entrepreneurs across the world in Europe.
Cool.
And talking about like just going in you could have the best operations possible. You could have the best process. You could have the best people. The problem is, unless you sell something, how do you know that process is great?
That's a good point.
Like you could be like, in theory, everything is perfect, but until you have a client, you have no idea.
Yeah.
And so like, to me, business development and sales is the most exciting part about business, because one, it keeps the money going so you can keep going, but it also helps you prove concept.
Yeah. The phrase that comes to mind for me is, it's a good risk to bet on an expert's very well-educated guess. You can make a well-educated guess, this will probably connect, and that's worth taking the risk. Absolutely. Otherwise, until you've actually done that, all it is an educated, potentially likely guess, but you don't know till you actually try.
Yeah.
That's fun.
You know, if failure is like the thing that's like, oh man, what if I fail? Like, you're going to, like, I'm going to shatter the bubble now. You're going to stumble, you're going to fail. As you got into insurance, I'm sure there's things that you stumbled at. Oh yeah. That you learn from.
Correct. And you know, you can learn from your own mistakes. You can learn from others' mistakes. You can go back and clean them up most of the time. Worst case scenario, if you can't clean up the mistake, that's what insurance is for. Even insurance agents carry insurance. We do, just like doctors do. You know, we call it errors and omissions as opposed to malpractice, but it's the same concept. So, you know, you go out, you give it your best, and yeah, it's okay to clean up mistakes. Everyone makes them, and I think recognizing no one's perfect, and it's okay to be your genuine self and give it your 100% best effort, you're going to start getting connections with people, but that's the only way to do it, is to give it a shot.
Jonathan, that's like mic drop moment. I think we have our episode title is Jumping into the Unknown.
Hey, I like that.
I love that. It ties into figure skating and the entrepreneurial journey, but you know,
sure.
It's you kept saying it. I'm like, there's something there, and then you said jumping into the unknown. I'm like, that's it. I think that's it.
I like that. It's every sales conversation. That's what you're doing to an extent, always. And not only sales, but even customer service. You don't know when you talk to someone who's already a client where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And who knows? You may find, and here's another side note to this, a lot of people in my industry steer away from serving their own clients because they make more money, building their customer base and getting more clients on board. So a lot of people feel kind of neglected by their agent after they're on board. I do my best to not do that. I can't say I'm perfect. There's times I get swamped like anyone, but you might be surprised how much your existing clients could be the source of your next sale, whether they need something else you didn't know, or you continue to keep them happy. And guess what? Someone else they know will discover they need what you can offer.
Absolutely.
And you'll have that connection. So you keep your clients happy and satisfied, and they will be the source of your next sale. That is the essence of referral marketing.
We spend so much time and money trying to figure out how to increase our business and then neglect the people that we already have that are doing business with us. Like take care of those people, because one, referrals will feed you more people when you're taking care of them. But two, if we're staying in touch with them and finding out how is their life changing. Because for you, in any life change, people don't realize that, I got that new 4-wheeler. We're not even thinking about like what they need to do with that. If you're proactively keeping relationships with your clients and you're finding out how life is changing, you're able to take care of them and serve them at a whole other level while growing your business.
Correct.
And that's the win-win that you talked about at the beginning.
Sometimes the client becomes a bigger client in the process.
Yeah.
Sometimes they find you another client. Sometimes it's even just the satisfaction for you of knowing you're doing your job well. And that if you put that positive energy and good service out there, it'll eventually pay back. That's the essence of farming a business, rather than hunting it as the churn and burn sales do.
Yep.
You don't always know. It's almost like jumping into the unknown, but you don't even know when that landing will happen to find out whether it worked or not. But if you put a good shot out there, some of them will land and connect you along the way.
Got another visual of somebody doing a triple axel.
Just floating and floating. Figure skaters have nightmares about that. I can't come down. No. And sometimes I just want to know whether this is going to work or not. And we can all feel that in business. We want to know whether our efforts are going to bring fruit or not. And we hate having to wait to find out. That's human nature, And even for people that don't run a business, take an employee, they take someone who's applied for a job. You want to know. Take someone who's applied for a loan. You want to know whether you can take that step and buy that house and live that dream, or whatever the case may be. There's always going to be times that we don't know when we're going to get the answer necessarily. And sometimes you need to continue to look, and you call and you follow up and ask. Sometimes you need to give the client the space to reach back out. Or my favorite, ask them, when can I check in with you? One of my favorite phrases, if someone's supposed to email something to me, well, tell me when I should check my spam folder if I don't see it yet. Yes. And I'm not directly saying, when will you do this? I'm not asking them to commit. I'm kind of softly doing the same thing, though, to keep that follow-up happening.
Yep.
And it helps, but I still don't know when I check in if they'll have an answer or not. And I've learned to accept that. And, that means there will be some weeks where I don't grow the business at all. I take care of my clients, but I have no one new. Then there's weeks where I will take on 4 weeks worth of clients, quote unquote. And I have learned to accept that every valley is followed by a peak. Every peak can have a valley. If you're lucky, you get a mountain range peak after peak. It doesn't happen often, but you're not going to find yourself in a complete valley. And if you do, change course, jump differently, go find a new mountain range. And what that means for you, I could do analogies all day long. But anyway, I think all of that is a long way for me to say that if you know you're doing the right service, that you're doing well, it will work. Eventually people will see it and it will connect.
John, thank you so much for coming down and sharing your story and your expertise with us.
It has been a pleasure anytime.
Absolutely.
Take care.